Nice. All right. So what I'm going to talk about today is cracking the entrepreneur code. When I started Practice Fusion, I think like any other entrepreneur, we read about other success models, read about other books. There's tons of rules and lessons on the web, a lot of redundancy. And I think over time what I found was that most of the content out there had been written by guys who had never really built a successful company. And I felt like they were kind of capitalizing on my dream. So what's really interesting about Practice Fusion is that electronic health records are a huge barrier to entry, super, super high. So it took us a lot longer than most companies to get to our first $1 million. It took us about 3 years. I think some other attributes of that was that I was incredibly inexperienced, and that our market, our product being free and web-based was incredibly unorthodox. So it took us a long time, and I think what I really wanted to do here was share some of the findings we had and share some of those learnings because we had a lot more time to spend thinking about them. So my first lesson here is, the first lesson here is know your rock bottom, know your threshold for pain. For those of you that know, that's T-Pain. He sings I'm on a boat. So think about T-Pain. A couple years ago, I was watching HBO's show The Wired. Anyone seen that show? Fantastic, right? There's a woman in a room, and she's in a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, and she's talking about her addiction to heroin. And she says, when I started my addiction, I set a rock bottom in my head that I would never go below. And then, let's say it was living on the streets to support her habit, and she did that. She crossed that line. She talked about how she would never steal to support her addiction, and she crossed that line again. She talked about how she would never sell her body to support her addiction, and she crossed that line. What I learned in this process is that your company will be an addiction. Okay? So think about upfront how far you are willing to go. Are you willing to sell your house, sell your car, give up time with your friends because you can't afford to go out with them anymore, give up time with your family? When I started Practice Fusion, I sold my house, I sold my car, I had another house that went into foreclosure. There was one point where in 2008, we were going out of business. Like, it was the one time, I used to be in denial a lot, so that's part of the addiction cycle, right? And so every time we were out of money, I was like, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. And I sold my car to pay a developer. But this one time, I was like, we are really going out of business. And coincidentally, I got into a motorcycle accident a few years earlier. The check came for that accident, the settlement check, to get my rotator cuff fixed. And I used the check that was supposed to be meant to fix my body to make payroll. Yes. When we got funded, I was 4 years behind on my taxes. I needed 2 root canals. Okay? So the lesson here, before you go too far down this road, ask yourself what you're willing to give to pursue your dream. You will most likely have to go past that rock bottom you have in your head. So again, know your T-Pain. All right, Pitchman. So you have a vision. How many entrepreneurs are in the room? Oh, Jesus. All right, exciting. All right, guys, take a second. Close your eyes. Imagine the world 5, 10, 20 years from now. Imagine your creation out there. Imagine customers using it. Imagine you paid the dues. You've gone through the pain. It's a reality. Having that foresight, that ability to see the future, come back into the present, and sum that all up in a sentence. So know your pitch. Understand it. Practice Fusion pitch, free, web-based electronic health records. Super, super obvious, right? Took us years to get to it. One of our old pitches was collaborative healthcare solutions, directly from the Dilbert guide of how not to mantra your company. It was the elusive obvious. They say during a first impression, it only takes 2 seconds for a person to make a judgment about you. What I found is that my ability or inability to convey my vision, my goals, what the company did, my product, etc., made or break my ability to close funding, close press, build a great team, and build my vision and my product. The lesson here, know you're comfortable, get very comfortable pitching. A lot of people aren't. Many people don't know. My poor Director of PR, Emily Peters over here, has to deal with me before every one of these presentations. I don't like doing these. It is so far out of my comfort zone. the net is I have to suck it up. It's part of the role. The lesson here is you are the pitch man. Embrace it. I want to believe the hype. I love this slide. So the lesson, I learned something along the way. The definition of hype is intense promotion. So you have this vision, but you'll always have one problem as an entrepreneur, and I have tremendous respect for the guys who are just up here. I did that for 3 years. Pitching is really, really hard, and that catch-22, that kind of founder syndromic of I want to build a product, but I can't get funded unless I have a product and customers and revenue, and I can't get to that unless I have a product. It sucks. It's a terrible, terrible thing. Where do you start? You can't build this product. And what I learned in the process, we were kind of in this first 3 years when my head was really down, someone, a journalist from Healthcare IT News, Deborah, I don't remember her last name, called me up. You know Deborah, right? So anyway, she called us up and had heard about what we were doing, and she was like, I heard you guys are potentially releasing a free electronic health record, and it was really early, and we were being ridiculous. We're like, oh, we don't want to tell anyone our big secret that we're going to give away our stuff for free because that would be really obvious. And we told her about it, and she wrote about the story, and it got into 2 articles. And what I realized was this became the value of having something written is tremendous. Investors started calling me. Partners started calling me. It started leading to other press. And so what I really started to figure out was the press was currency. When you don't have any currency, exposure was currency. So then everyone became a press contact in my mind. I would go on websites and I'd be like, oh, this article's really good. I'm going to actually scrape this name and address, and this person's going in my list. I would download email spiders. Do you guys know what those are? And it would go out on the web, and I put in @WSJ.com, and it would scrape every person on the internet with the extension WSJ, New York Times, Wired, wherever it was, and I had this massive list, and I would make up press releases. I'd be like, oh, we're doing, we could reposition our product, and I'd write a story myself, and I was so poor, I couldn't afford to put the press release on the wire, so I blasted it out to all these people, and it was me and 3 engineers at the time, and I would make 100 phone calls in a day, and I'd just do it until I got some traction, and when I finally would get another press hit, that was gold. There's something about when a third party writes about you that everything you've been talking about is reality. People accept it as the truth for some reason. It's a huge deal. I would then treat my investors like a press list as well. I had them in a list. I would take that one article and I'd blast them, and I start calling them again. And sooner or later, you start calling the investor, and he's like, yeah, for some reason I keep hearing about you guys. You guys are doing really good. Lesson here, what I found is that press is the single best way to attract cash, a team, customers, more press. Now, this is not the end-all, be-all. It's a great way to get the ball rolling, get out of that catch-22. That said, there's no bullshit here. You cannot compromise your integrity. The stories have to be based on some reality. Fake it till you make it. That's one of the unsaid laws in this presentation. The next lesson, you are an athlete. So I had a coach a couple years ago that said this to me. He's like, you are an athlete. And what he told me he saw was that founders or entrepreneurs would constantly overlook their personal teams. So when you're building your company, you're like, oh, I need a CFO and a marketing guy and all this stuff. But he wasn't talking about that. He was talking about what you need around your personal circle to make you successful. So you need great coaches. You need great mentors and success models. When you have an employee issue, when you have a question about how to structure an investment, you need sage counsel to reach out to talk to, and take all that input and come to a thoughtful decision. That's what a great leader does. Most of the things you're going to see as an entrepreneur, there's no right or wrong answer to them, so you need that input. Really, really important. Great personal assistant, therapist, both physical and emotional. Cheerleaders, incredibly important too as an athlete. You do ultimately, you don't want yes men around you, but on the personal side, someone that's always there to support you. Now, this should not be your friends. This should not be your spouse. It's a great way to burn them out and get divorced. Hire a professional. The lesson I really learned here is that you will break down. The pace of a startup is too fast to sustain for any one person. Maintain yourself. Be sure to take care of yourself like a professional athlete. This is the most important slide in the deck. Plan your evolution or go extinct. As an entrepreneur, if you're building your company, you're so heads down, you have so much tunnel vision that you'll look up and you'll be like, holy shit, I'm not qualified to do this job anymore. Your company will outpace you. What you'll also see is this will happen to many of your employees over the cycle of building your company. The most important thing I've learned in this entire journey is that I must evolve. It's really, really critical. I had dinner with John Dillon, who was one of the CEOs of Salesforce a few years back, and I was, in hindsight, really lucky to get 2 or 3 hours with him and his insight. And he talked about the concept of hull speed. So he was big into boating, and the hull of a boat is only rated to go so many miles an hour. Let's say the hull is rated to go 40 knots or 40 miles per hour. You can put the biggest engine in the world on that boat, it will still only go 40 miles per hour. As an entrepreneur, if you are not evolved, what I've learned is that you can get a shitload of cash, you can get the best executive team. If you are not evolved, if your hull speed is slowing you down, if you have glass ceilings, if you have limited beliefs, you will impede your company's ability to grow. To overcome this, very, very simple, but I'd never really done this before, I came up with my own personal development plan. And I worked on this with one of my coaches. We've actually rolled these out to our team, and it's not like a review process. It's quite profound. It has my personal mission in life, my goals. It has my wellness plan. Like, I won't go on vacation because of my addiction that I just confessed to you all about the company, right? So I work all the time, and the wellness plan has that balance in there. It has commitments to my mentors and my coaches. The hardest part of the job is this evolution. It's hard to comprehend, but you are the biggest obstacle of your company's success. The lesson here is if you cannot evolve, you will likely fail, or you will likely not be part of your company. Any South Park fans here? Apparently not. All right. Control your destiny by maintaining control. As your creation evolves, you're going to attract many, many different types of people. And I have this kind of concept I came up with called founder syndrome. And for the guys that are raising money, they've been at it a long time. And kind of back to the heads down thing, you're building your product, and you're in solitude the entire time, right? You're alone. And anyone ever read Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People? Right? Fantastic book. He talks about in the book, the human condition is to feel appreciated and important. And if you're working for 3 years by yourself at the Starbucks, that you're like a neglected dog, right? No one's pet you. After a few years of this neglect, you will be dying for attention. When your product starts taking off, you'll likely be psychologically at your weakest. And you will attract companies that will go, this is really cool. I want to partner with you, help you market, and let's do an 80-20 rev share in my favor. You'll attract COOs that want half your company, investors that want to take over the entire company. So it's hard to calibrate on intent when you're neglected and excited that you're finally getting traction. It's really, really difficult. Mark Pincus from Zynga, huge multi-billion-dollar company, Farmville, you guys all know him. He has a saying I love. It's don't throw your baby out the window. And I think that really resonated with me the first time I heard it, because, again, you are so neglected. As the founder, your job is to maintain control. Control of yourself, control of your composure, of your company. Don't get overzealous when someone finally decides to partner with you. Don't be seduced. The lesson I really learned here is that ultimately, as the founder, if you're calibrated, controlled, composed, you will always know what's best for your company, whether that is the company with you or without you. So my lesson here is, remember, don't kick your baby. My last slide is erode the system. So healthcare is broken. Insurance companies are innovatively bankrupt. Payers, you have payers to deal with, government, HIPAA Stark, so huge hurdles on the barriers to entry. The biggest companies in the world can't solve this problem, right? It scares me that Google can't build a good PHR. Doctors are frugal. They don't want to pay for technology. Patients are lazy. They don't care about their health. the odds are against you guys in this room. You guys have chosen a very, very hard path. That said, it can be done. My message here is don't be afraid to innovate in an autonomous way. My feeling here, and this will probably go against a lot of the people that just presented, so I apologize for this, but if your application is reliant on the current healthcare system, you are driving through a war field. Don't be afraid to go around it. Don't be afraid to be autonomous. Don't be afraid to innovate without these other entities. When we originally started the company, it was kind of the obvious, let's go to a payer. They have lots of doctors. Let's go to a hospital, managed care organization, IPA, the AMA, the CMA, and there's just so many of them. And what we learned, we did that all, and we got so frustrated, we just kind of started eroding the system. We went directly to doctors. They were the ultimate decision makers. We have 100,000 users, 21 million patients under management. I intentionally created this deck to elicit emotion from you guys. This is the same emotion you will get. The feeling you saw when that seal was up, that's the same emotion you will get as you start disrupting the system. Anyone know Arthur Schopenhauer? So Schopenhauer was a German philosopher. He talked about all truths pass through 3 stages. First, they are ridiculed. The second stage is that they are violently opposed. Third, they're accepted as common knowledge. If you are successful, you will be ridiculed. If you are successful, you will be violently opposed. If you are very, very, very successful, your product will be, and your vision will be accepted as common knowledge. With that, I hope you all go forth. I'm confident that you indeed can erode the system and solve this problem. Thank you, the DC to VC.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you. So about 4 or 5 months ago when we were putting together the agenda for this event, I actually started the agenda from the bottom up thinking we want to close with Ryan Howard. I think I made a good call. What do you think? So this is the time everybody's been waiting for. We are going to announce the winners. First, we'll present the seed stage, and then we'll present the Series A. The way we cut it off was after 3 minutes, we tallied the votes for both. So seed stage, after 3 minutes and over 300 votes, the winner is iNetra. David Safran. Photo op. Asa, here you are. Great.
Coaching, personal wellness.
Just for a second, do we want that in the back?
Yes, because
Yes.
he's going to go around the system.
The guy, he's trying to sell the guy in the tank an eye exam because he doesn't know where he's going.
Okay, thank you. Congrats. Series A. After 3 minutes of voting and over 200 votes, the winner for Series A is Jif. James Courier.
Good job, man.
Thanks, brother.
Hang on.
Center stage, will you?
Center stage.
Amazing background.
You could have the better looking blonde, but you get me. Sorry.
Turn this way a little bit. There you go. That's nice. All right. All right, guys. So in this case, it's going to be from here.
It's like a Chinese wedding. Have you ever been to a Chinese wedding? It's all pictures all the time. Great. So we've made it, thank you, congratulations. So we've made an executive decision because we are running so late that we're going to go right into startup health. If you need to use the restrooms, please go ahead. No one's stopping you, but you don't want to miss this. We're going to start with Stephen Krein, Unity Stokes. Can I pass the mic to you at this point? Oh, there you are. Great.
That's me. I'm just
Thank you for coming.
I couldn't vote. I couldn't run a game. I would have voted for all of you. It's very flash.
Perfect. Is the, hold on a second, let me see if the,
You were
Yeah,
the,
am
all
I
the
on?
cream of the crop. No question. No question.
We're going to take about 2-3 minutes, and then we're going to get started. Bob and Thomas are on their way up. Come on up. Yeah, we can do that. How are you, man?
Good.
Good to see you.
I'm going to run to the restroom.
Go ahead. Go ahead. How do I get this log? This is supposed to be. For now.
Oh, you need a receipt.
It's not in there.
You can use CCC. So I have a D. Someone has a D.
You still have it plugged in? Perfect.
No, I took the thing out.
Yours is an A.
Here's the B.
Hello. Okay, we're going to get started. I know everyone's been antsy, but sitting in their seats for the last 4 hours. I have water up here. It's fine. Thank you, Matt. Please take your seats, and we're going to get started and wrap up. And we are sitting in between you and a great cocktail party sponsored by Silicon Valley Bank. For those people in the back, there's a lot of seats up here, and I am terribly honored I'm incredibly honored to have been invited to participate in what I have experienced so far as a pivotal shift in health technology, entrepreneurship, and investing. I think I had asked Rebecca and Ching how many people came to last year's event. I think it was about 160 or 170. And there were over 390 people registered for today's event. And over the last several months working with Morgan Thaler, I got to experience firsthand the incredible dedication and sincere interest that Morgan Thaler has at truly participating in the transformation of healthcare. Not really just with money, but with community participation. And so today, I'm going to spend the next, hopefully 90 minutes or so with two people that I've not only been inspired by, but had the privilege to get to know over the last several months. Bob Kocher, who is a partner at Venrock. He might be the newest venture capitalist in health technology here. And Thomas Getz, who is the editor of Wired Magazine and the author of The Decision Tree. And for those of you who haven't had a chance to read The Decision Tree, a truly visionary book on how the transformation of healthcare is upon us. What I want to do before we get into the roundtable is give you a little bit of a background of what Startup Health is and the wild ride we've been on as ourselves a startup over the last 5 months. I've been an entrepreneur outside of the health and wellness space for the last almost 20 years, building companies from the East Coast, but everything focused on consumer internet and business-to-business services for consumer packaged goods companies. And 5 years ago, one of my investors from my last company, which was called WebStakes, which we took public and was acquired by iVillage, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And I got to see firsthand how big the gap was between the doctor visit and the Google search box. And we got to see some really innovative technologies here today, but in 2007, the doctor using the internet was not even something you could even put your head around. And so I embarked on building my new company, Organized Wisdom. And I thought, like any entrepreneur was in any other sector, that you could, just like I did in 1995 and 96, start a company, couple years, raise $40 million, take it public and sell it, just like I did before. And I had a rude awakening. It's healthcare. And I remember some of my initial investors, like Esther Dyson, saying to me, be patient. This is going to be a decade-long process. This is healthcare, and nothing is going to change very quickly. But you're onto something. So I think your entrepreneurial drive will make it happen, but you're going to have a lot of road bumps along the way. And so I got to see over the last 5 years firsthand how difficult it is to be an entrepreneur inside of the health and wellness sector. And if you're excited today about the prospects, I can tell you that at the very first Health 2.0 conference in 2007, there was one venture capitalist there who wasn't even making investments, and people weren't even talking about investing in this space because the only benchmark was WebMD, and WebMD was just $1 billion company, so nobody was really getting excited about putting money into the space. And so over the years, as we raised money and as we navigated the regulatory environment, as we navigated the slow sales cycle, selling anything to pharma or doctors, I sat back with a couple of my investors, namely Jerry Levin, who is the former CEO and chairman of Time Warner, to talk about creating something that would make it easier for entrepreneurs and investors to navigate the obstacles inside of health and wellness. And I say entrepreneurs and investors because there didn't seem to be any collaboration between the two. It seemed to be on one side you had entrepreneurs hoping their idea would make it through to something that was interesting to the investors, and to investors, they sat back waiting to hear the good idea. And the stakes are pretty high in this space. I mean, if we'd been sitting here seeing 11 companies in social gaming today, would we really care if all 11 of them hit or if none of them hit? And I can tell you, sitting through the last 11 presentations, I really do want those companies to either be successful or pivot to something more successful because they're all working on pain points in the healthcare system. And so we have this opportunity, which is why it's about opportunities, to remove the obstacles and work together to help overcome them and truly change healthcare together. And so Startup Health on June 9th at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Health Data Initiative event launched Startup Health and a growth academy, really the first growth academy for health and wellness entrepreneurs. Now, a lot of people ask really quickly, oh, is that like an accelerator like Techstars or Y Combinator? Now you could say like Rock Health or Blueprint Health. And the answer is no. We don't see this as a 12-week or 6-week or a 6-month exercise to work with entrepreneurs. We see this as a curriculum that will help entrepreneurs navigate all of the different obstacles that they're going to embark on, whether it's regulatory, whether it's capital raising, whether it's building the right team. It's about truly looking at the long-term prospects that we're all going to need to work on over the next decade to change healthcare. So our goal is something that I think is very important. It's to inspire, educate, and provide resources and capital to health and wellness entrepreneurs so they can build sustainable companies over the next decade. And so our commitment that we announced, and we're going to emphasize here again today, is that we will help 1,000 companies over the next decade, working closely with them as well as investors to truly transform healthcare. Now, imagine if just every one of those companies had 10 people working in them. You'd have 10,000 jobs created. So this has a ripple effect across lots of things, not just creating equity value, but actually transforming healthcare. So on June 9th, with Anish Chopra, the CTO of the government, and actually of the White House, and Todd Park, and Aman and Will Yu, we announced Startup Health with partners like Startup America, which is Steve Case's organization that he launched from the White House's initiative called Startup America, and the wonderful new CEO who just came on a few months ago to Startup America, Scott Case. Organized Wisdom, my first health and wellness company that I feel incredibly passionate about, but really is leading and using a lot of the tools that we've been using inside to share with other entrepreneurs. And then the accelerators, Rock Health and Blueprint Health and Health 2.0. And we got to spend time at the White House the night before the event. I actually got to spend time with Jeff from Doximity, and I met Bob Kocher actually in the White House. And it was actually at the White House that we had a chance to spend time with, actually at the time, just Vice President Biden, to tell him about Startup Health. And it was during this conversation that we had with Vice President Biden that he literally said to Unity and myself, hold on a second, the president has to hear this. Now, you kind of got to sit back and go like, yeah, this is probably like his show that he does whenever someone's sitting in his office. And so he actually asked his assistant to call down and see if the president is in the Oval Office. Now, again, thinking this is a complete joke, couldn't even like say anything to my partner because we were like, come on. But 2 minutes later, his assistant leans into the room and says, Mr. Vice President, the president is actually waiting for you down the hall. And I got to walk down the hall in the West Wing right into the Oval Office where the president of the United States was sitting behind his desk, like waiting for me. That's a whole other discussion. But what was interesting was that the opening line that the vice president said to the president is, Mr. President, you have to hear, actually I think he called him Barack, he said, you have to hear about Startup Health. And we got to do an elevator pitch in the Oval Office alone with the vice president and the president of the United States. And I knew right there that we had something special. That a meeting with the vice president, which was alone special, that was really helped even get us into the White House by Todd Park and Anish and Aman, was that we had now something that we realized could truly transform healthcare. That this idea of building a curriculum where we could bring together entrepreneurs and investors and organizations to make a commitment. So we announced on June 9th, the day after we spent time with the president and the vice president, two things. One is called a Startup Health Pledge. Simple pledge. It's not to us, it's to all of you. And it's a pledge that anybody could come to startuphealth.com and make. It was, I am committed to supporting the health and wellness ecosystem. Now, that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. So we ask people to self-classify themselves. Are they an investor? Are they an entrepreneur? Are they an organization? And to date, now this is June 9th. What is that, like 2 months ago? 750 people have come in, written down their first name, last name, and classified themselves as a entrepreneur investor organization. Unbelievable support from the community in just 2 months. And so we announced that the second thing we were going to do besides this Startup Health Pledge was a series of roundtables. This is the second roundtable. The first one we did with Startup America. And Scott Case, the new CEO of Startup America, who is no relation to Steve Case, who's the chairman, and Jerry Levin, who is now officially the chairman of Startup Health. Linda Holliday, who is the founder of Digitas Health, which was really and is the largest pharmaceutical ad agency in the world, and Esther Dyson, who is probably one of the most prominent angel investors in the space, who's also, 3 of the 4 of them are actually also investors in Organized Wisdom and will be in Startup Health. And so at this roundtable, we shared with everyone the roadmap to health and wellness entrepreneurship. And at this roundtable, we also announced the launch of what's going to happen in January, which is we are launching an academy for health and wellness entrepreneurs. Again, a long-term academy that will help entrepreneurs navigate from the idea phase to the startup phase, to the ramp-up phase, and the speed-up phase. And not just in an ad hoc way. We've developed dozens of thinking tools that are going to help entrepreneurs strategically think through everything from who their ideal customer is, what the primary goals are of the company, to what the challenges that the company has, how to build their dream team, how to pitch an investor and talk to investors. And we're going to together create these tools and share them and make them better over time. But these tools will evolve with the company and with the entrepreneurs. And so regardless of what stage of business you're at, Startup Health and the Academy can help you along the way. And so this Academy, we opened up applications to on July 13th. 125 applications came in 8 weeks. As I was telling someone outside, there were over a dozen doctors who have ideas for businesses, but no idea about the business side in some cases or the technology side of actually building a business. But one of the fascinating things I found was that I thought they were going to be 90% idea phase companies. But instead, 24% of them were idea, and over 70% were at the ramp up or startup phase, which is actually you've got the company together, like as Matt Browning said, the band's together, but you're stuck. Or you're at a place in your business where you need help navigating that. And so these phases showed us that this healthcare system needs a curriculum and a way to bring entrepreneurs and investors together. And so we invited 60 of the 125 to participate in office hours, which we conducted in August and September. And we discussed where these entrepreneurs were stuck and what their really focus was in actually building their business. And we learned that entrepreneurs need a lot of help, but the one thing that was unequivocal across the 120 companies, just like the 11 you saw here today, every one of them wants to change healthcare. This is not social gaming, guys. This is not, a couponing industry. This is changing healthcare. And so I feel very much obligated to make sure that Startup Health Academy is not limited to just those we invest in. And so we decided, actually, after a long discussion, actually several long discussions, to actually launch free monthly boot camp sessions over the web and the telephone with entrepreneurs to help them use some of our tools to formulate their ideas or really share where they're stuck. And so as you'll see during the roundtable, investors have reached out and talked about how can we help them and how can we help them bridge the gap between themselves and entrepreneurs. And so taking some thinking tools and actually sharing that with entrepreneurs. And so you're going to get to see the Bob Kocher filter that we created today. After a discussion with Bob about how many times over and over again he meets with entrepreneurs and he sees them make the same 4 mistakes over and over and over and over again. And so instead of Bob being frustrated over and over and over again or just cringing or waiting for a meeting to end, he's going to have a filter that he's going to be able to give to an entrepreneur or send them into Startup Health and make sure that before an entrepreneur is going to sit down with Bob Kocher and Venrock, they're going to actually get a taste of really making sure they have everything thought through that they need to discuss. And so what we have really set out to do today and over the next several months is engage with the community. And so this boot camp sessions begin in October and will be in November and be monthly. The Academy is launching in January. Last week, we were honored to be a launch partner at an announcement that GE made along with Venrock, Kleiner Perkins, Moore Davidow, and I forget the fourth firm, HLM. And they announced a $100 million commitment to cancer and the research and elimination of cancer, and not just having it as a killer, but as a chronic disease. And so $100 million was pledged by GE and these 4 venture firms. And they actually launched a $100 million challenge to entrepreneurs. And so what I actually made a commitment to do is make sure that I share this with everyone. And so if you go to challenge.healthyimagination.com, you can actually submit your idea and have a chance to get $100,000 to work on getting some of that $100 million. And there's a lot of challenges out there, and that's one of the most exciting parts about being an entrepreneur today. There has never been a better time to be an entrepreneur, but there's never been a better time to be a health and wellness entrepreneur. And companies like GE are proving that by making that commitment to connect with the entrepreneurial community. The other thing that happened today, besides this wonderful event, is that we launched another challenge with Gerson Lehrman, UNICEF, the UN Foundation, the Bill and Gates Foundation, which is a challenge to bring entrepreneurs to figure out how to get the last 20% of the world vaccinated. And I sat together about a month ago at a dinner talking with the most brilliant people I had ever met around global vaccines and global vaccinations, and everybody around the table had access to money, whether it's the Gates Foundation or Pfizer or Merck. But there were no entrepreneurs around the table except myself and the CEO of Indiegogo. And so we said, you know what, let's bring entrepreneurs to the table and see if we can figure this out. And so they announced the challenge today as well. Today we obviously have our second roundtable. Next week we're going to be at the fifth Health 2.0 conference. And then beginning next month, we were selected to be and helping Fred Zusa, who is actually running the health track for the New York City Venture Capital Association. And we selected 6 companies that are New York-based in health and wellness to present to the entrepreneurial community, the venture capital community in New York. We have our third roundtable on November 8th in New York City, where the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and Todd Park will be leading that roundtable. And then on December 1st and December 5th, the New York eHealth Initiative, which I actually just learned the highest adoption rate of EMRs in the entire country is in New York State. And there's an entire initiative with a boatload of money making that happen. And so we're actually very happy to participate in a creation of a startup pavilion at that event where we can showcase for free entrepreneurs that we've selected that will have a chance to present to both providers and investors. And then one of the things that I am really, really excited about is something that we're doing with Blueprint Health and Rock Health and hopefully HealthBox, which is creating the first pavilion, startup pavilion, that's free for startups to come showcase their ideas to providers and people that are attending the mHealth Summit. And so we'll be having our 4th roundtable in Washington. And each of these events and this pavilion idea is about free exchange of dialogue between entrepreneurs and investors and really leading the community together to change healthcare and do it in a way that realizes if the more walls we break down for each other, the more likely it is that we're going to change healthcare. And so there's 4 things that I'll leave you with before we roll into the roundtable. The first is we are offering everyone to apply to Startup Health and participate in our free boot camps that are monthly. And I can tell you that working with Pfizer and working with venture firms and working with angel investors, we've created some amazing tools for you that will be given to you free and will work with you in a workshop format over the phone to help make sure that you're maximizing your meetings with companies, whether you're pitching them for money or you're pitching them to be your customers. And you can also apply for Startup Health Academy, which is launching in January, where we'll be both making investments and giving them the curriculum over the long, extended period of time. Not just ad hoc, but again, around these strategic thinking tools. The second thing is apply for these startup pavilions. They're free. We're going to select 6 New York City-based entrepreneurs for the one on December 1st, but at a national level, working with Rock Health and Blueprint Health, and hopefully, I keep saying hopefully HealthBox because I haven't confirmed that one. We're going to have this startup pavilion. 40 mobile health companies, and someone made the comment today, there's a lot of mobile up here. It's like everybody's a mobile health company. We can showcase the 40 best ones. So we're going to have an application process that's driven off of the Startup Health application. So if you already applied to Startup Health and you're one of the 125 that already has, just send us an email that you want to apply for one of the free pavilion spots in Washington on December 5th. And if you haven't, apply. And you'll actually be considered for one of these 40 spots. And so these are the types of things that we're coming together to do to change healthcare. The third is take the pledge if you haven't already. And lastly, attend our roundtables. They're really meant for, as I hopefully you'll see when Thomas and Bob talk, and you'll see at the cocktail party, we're all in this to work together to change healthcare, make money, have fun, but do it in a way that is fun. And I can tell you that I don't want the next entrepreneur that wants to start a health and wellness company to be overwhelmed with a whole list of things that are going to stand in their way, because I can tell you right now, we're starting to knock them down. And a year from now, and 2 years from now, and 3 years from now, we're going to be talking about how many more things we accomplish together working through this structured way of making sure that we can innovate in healthcare. And so I am, again, honored to invite up to the stage Thomas Getz and Bob Kocher.